All right, said Kibbley. What about those? The slates clattered like falling seashells as Turtle picked them up and passed one to Kibbley. With these, if you write a note on one, it'll appear on the other. He took the pencil and wrote, "Hi, Kibbley," on the smaller slate. The message appeared simultaneously.
I used to think I wanted to be a writer, Turtle said. So sometimes, when I was out hunting or training or whatever, I'd have a great idea or think of how I wanted to phrase something. But I'd always forget it by the time I got home. With these, I could take notes on the slate I carried with me, then erase it quick before my brothers saw it. But the notes would be there waiting on the other slate once I got home. I see, Kibbley said, finally looking sympathetic. I had siblings who picked on me too. A writer? So fancy scales. Oh, I gave that up a long time ago. Turtle shook his head. I wasn't any good anyway. He nudged the other items. I keep these kind of for sentimental value. I don't use them very much, since I don't want anyone to notice me using them. Sure, Kibbley said. He tipped his slate up to the light. But this is a great idea. I'll hang on to this one, and you can send me notes on what Darkstalker is doing, or any time you need me, or if Moon needs me, or anyone. I mean, hypothetically Moon, but anyone. I'll come flying, all right? Turtle nodded. It made him a little nervous to let half of one of his animus-touched objects out of his sight. What if it fell into the wrong claws? On the other talon, it was reassuring to have someone he could call for help. I guess I just agreed to follow Darkstalker to the rainforest, he realized. A clatter of talons came from the hallway, followed by a whooshing sound, a yelp of fury, and the distinct smell of something burning. Think I can guess who that is, Kibbley said with a grin. Turtle peeked out the door and found Peril jumping around trying to stomp out a small fire, except every time she touched it, the flames got higher. A few sleepy faces peered out from their caves and immediately withdrew when they saw her. "Ack!" she yelped. "Stop! Buckets of gizzards! Go out already!" Back, 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 Kibbley said, hurrying over and flapping her away with his wings. I got it. He pulled one of the message chalkboards off the wall and smothered the fire, then trampled out the last few glowing sparks as they tried to scuttle away. What kind of jerk leaves scrolls lying around in the hallway where anyone could set them on fire? Peril demanded. Someone is trying to pick a fight with me. Is that it? That was my homework, mumbled a Rainwing nervously from the nearest doorway. Oh, Peril said. She drew her wings back in, eyeing the hapless dragonette, who was half her size and a nervous, fizzy green color. She shot a glance at Turtle, of the "there's a right thing to say here, isn't there?" variety. Well, next time, keep your mess in your own cave, all right? She said, with what Turtle knew was about as much gentleness as she could muster. Sorry, stammered the Rainwing. Turtle cleared his throat. I'm sure Peril is sorry, too, he offered. She tilted her head at him. For burning up this dragon's homework, which he probably worked very hard on? Turtle tipped his head at the dragonette. Okay. Sure, Peril said, nodding vigorously. I'm sorry your scroll got under my claws and met a fiery end, she said to the Rainwing. On the plus side, at least it was a scroll and not, say, your tail. He turned an even paler shade of green and vanished into his cave. Good idea, she called after him. You shouldn't leave tails lying around the hallways either. That's our Peril, Turtle said to Kibbley, spreading a little terror before bedtime. Was I? She said. Humph. I thought that was a very nice apology myself. Turtle liked the dragon he was when he was with Peril, although he hadn't quite figured out how their stories fit together. He might be her sidekick, although she wasn't exactly a normal hero. Or he might be her voice of reason, like the dragon assigned to take care of a mad prophet or something. The closest parallel he could think of, though, was this scroll he'd once read about a dragonette who'd been lost and raised by a pack of orcas. So when she returned to her tribe, she had to be taught everything about language and relationships and how to interact with other dragons, and occasionally she would have furious fits and bite someone. With Peril, he sometimes felt like that wild dragon's foster brother, a minor character, but one of the few willing to risk hanging out with her. He was pretty sure they were friends, though, which was crazy. Never in a million years would he have guessed that he might end up friends with the Skywing Queen's deadliest weapon. She followed him and Kibli back into his sleeping cave, where he hurriedly scooted his sleeping mat to the far end of the room, away from Peril. He could move it to Kibli and Winter's cave later. He packed the smaller slate, the slate pencil, and the coral into his pouch to take with him to the rainforest. The pieces of the bowl were too big to fit, so he repacked them in his satchel and hid it under Umber's sleeping mat. "How was your meeting with Clay?" Kibli asked Peril. "Fine," she blurted. "Fine. Normal. Great. Weird. Totally fine. Why, what did you hear?" "Nothing at all," he assured her. "Just wondering." "Right," she said. "He was very pleased to hear about about Scarlet." She paused, looking like she'd swallowed an exploding cactus for a moment. "There was hugging," she finally burst out. "I mean, he gave me a hug. No big deal. Normal stuff, I'm sure. Dragons probably hug you guys all the time." Oh, Peril. Turtle kind of wished he could hug her to let her know he understood. "Clay likes you too," Kibli said to Peril. "Really?" Peril glowed like molten glass. "He does? How do you know?" "I can tell. He just doesn't quite know what to do about it yet," Kibli said. "Give him some time to figure it out. Like, lots and lots and lots of time." "I have lots and lots of time," Peril said, exhaling. "That's totally all right with me." She beamed at Turtle. "Kibli thinks Clay likes me," she said in a loud whisper. "I heard." Turtle smiled back at her. "I was a little worried he'd hate me after I burned the magic scroll and released a giant bad guy," Peril admitted. "But I guess Darkstalker's not bad, so everything's all right?" She squinted at the items Turtle was packing. "What are you doing?" "I'm going to follow Darkstalker to the rainforest tomorrow," Turtle said. "Just to see what happens." "Oh," Peril said, her wings drooping. One of them nearly caught on one of the scroll racks by the door, and Kibli quietly dragged it out of her reach. "You're leaving?" "Only for a little while, I hope," Turtle said. "I wish you could come with me." Peril held out her front talons. "I wish I could too, but no fire scales in the rainforest." "By order of the Queen," she said haughtily. "I'll miss your boring face, though," she said to Turtle. "Not like a lot, but I'll miss it a little bit." "You won't miss me at all," he said. "You'll have Clay to hang out with." "True," she said. "True, true." She tried to squash back her smile, but it kept sneaking out. "I really do wish she could come with me," Turtle thought. Her unpredictable, hilarious company was the only thing that had made him able to leave Jade Mountain in the first place. He'd been able to think of their adventure as her quest to find Scarlet. No pressure on him. Nothing enormously major he could mess up. Nobody expecting anything of him. Not like tomorrow, when he'd be following Darkstalker to the rainforest alone, without the option of using his magic. Alone. Powerless. Useless. This story couldn't possibly end well. Part 2. Rise to Power. Chapter 10. The rainforest was an ocean of leaves below Turtle, tossing and rippling in the wind like a dark green sea. A spray of bright yellow birds flew out of it, squawking and diving and looping back down again to sink beneath the surface. But the smell here was nothing like the ocean. Wild fruit and monkey droppings, heat and rich dirt, and roots growing in thick tangles in place of fish, salt, wide open air. "I have no idea why you decided to come," Anemone said, sweeping up on Turtle's left. He started, then glanced around at Darkstalker, but the large dragon was far in the lead, scanning the forest below. Anemone had been so close to him all morning that Turtle hadn't had a chance to speak to her, or try to convince her not to come. "I could say the same about you," he pointed out. "Shouldn't you be in school? Mother wouldn't want you wandering around Pyria like this." "I can learn far more from Darkstalker than from a crusty old shipwreck like Webb's," Anemone snorted. "And Mother doesn't have me on a leash anymore. I can go wherever I like." "Wasn't Pike worried about you leaving?" Turtle tried. His pouch thumped lightly against his chest as he twisted in the air to keep Anemone in sight. "I'm surprised he didn't insist on coming with you at least." "Oh, I didn't tell him," she said, tossing her head. "He was sleeping outside my cave, which he often does, because he's such a weirdo, and I snuck right past him. Not much of a guard, if that's what he was trying to do. Ha ha." Poor Pike. Waking up to find the princess had disappeared on his watch. He'd feel like such a failure. Turtle knew what that was like. "But what's your excuse?" Anemone demanded. "I thought you were terrified of Darkstalker. You said he doesn't like you, but he never even looks at you." "I just want to see what he does," said Turtle. His claws itched to reach for his pouch, to make sure the stick was still there, but he fought back the urge. "In case he does something super evil," Anemone teased, pouncing at him. Turtle flinched away. "You jellyfish. He's going to rescue his tribe, that's all." "Queen Glory already rescued his tribe," Turtle pointed out. "They're not on the volcano anymore. They're perfectly safe." "Right. Safe to be the crushed seashells under the talons of the rainwings." Anemone rolled her eyes. "Think about it, Big Brother. Imagine if Mother died and I was too spineless to take the throne, so all the Sea Wings decided to go live in the Mud Kingdom and let Queen Moorhen boss us around. Is that any way for a self-respecting tribe to live?" Turtle noticed Fearless listening to them with a scowl on her face. He decided it might be a good idea to change the subject. "Did you get in trouble with Darkstalker last night?" he asked. "I mean, I heard he was looking for you." He needed to know what was going on in Darkstalker's head. Did he suspect there was another Animus around? "Oh, that was the most ridiculous thing," Anemone said with a laugh. "He asked me if I cast a spell without his permission. I said, 'Oh, permission? Is that how this is?' And he said, 'Without my brilliant advice, then.' I said, I didn't think so, but sometimes I've used my power accidentally without noticing. Like, you'd think an Animus would learn not to yell at her stuff, but sometimes I forget and do it anyway. I made a pearl necklace explode that way once. Anyway, no, of course I'm not in trouble. He knows I'm a princess and can do whatever I want." "Oh, does he?" Turtle thought, but he didn't have a chance to respond. Up ahead, Darkstalker shot a burst of flame into the sky and beckoned to Anemone and the Nightwings. They darted over to him as though he was the sun, and they all wanted to fall into it. "Time for our grand entrance," Darkstalker announced. He dove into the canopy and the others followed, one by one. Turtle sighed and flapped along behind them. He wondered what would happen if Anemone figured out that Darkstalker couldn't see or hear Turtle. She tended to accept that the world revolved around her, so it would probably be a while before she noticed. And then, will I tell her the truth? He dropped from the hot sun sky down and down into dappled green light that reminded him of the summer palace before it was destroyed. Long-limbed creatures of fur flurried out along the branches as he maneuvered carefully between the thick vines and grasping spiderwebs. The trees were interwoven like living nets, lying in wait for their prey. Far below them, on the rainforest floor, the entire Nightwing tribe was gathered in clearings, certainly fit in with everything else Darkstalker had done so far, but it still hadn't occurred to him. No tribe had ever had a king in the history of he could be king. Then I could be a king too. Where did that thought come from? Turtle would never want to be king in a million years, and he would never be able to do what it took to become one. Even after what I did to Chameleon. He frowned down at his twitching talons. That was not the real him. These thoughts were not the real him either. Moon broke away from her mother and started pushing forward through the crowd. "You can't do that!" Deathbringer spat at Darkstalker. Glory didn't stop him. She was staring at Darkstalker as though he'd upended 80 million words on her head, and she was trying to put them in the right order to make a scroll. "Why not?" Darkstalker asked. "For one thing, you're male," said Deathbringer, "and for another, you're not royalty, so you have no right to the throne." "In case you hadn't noticed, she's not exactly of royal Nightwing blood, either," Darkstalker said, flicking his tail at Glory. "And just because we've never had a king before, doesn't mean we shouldn't have one now." "Pyria has only had queens for the entirety of dragon history," said Deathbringer. "Male dragons cannot rule their tribes. That's just the way it is." "Things can change," Darkstalker said airily. "We're dragons, not ants. We can do things differently if we choose to." Turtle had a flash of déjà vu and touched his claws to his head. Where had he heard that before? From one of the teachers at Jade Mountain? "Darkstalker!" Moon hissed from the front of the crowd, and he looked down at her. "What are you doing? You promised not to hurt my friends." "Feel free to check on your friends," said Darkstalker, in an unsettlingly gentle voice. "I'm sure you'll find that they're all safe and perfectly unharmed." "But Glory's my friend, too," Moon said, her voice wobbling. "I don't want you to kill her." Was that real sympathy in Darkstalker's eyes? "Oh, Moon," he said. "The truth is, you don't want me to kill anybody. And neither do I. But we are dragons. There's a way these things have to be done." "I cannot accept your challenge," Glory said. And Darkstalker turned back to her, leaving Moon with her talons helplessly outstretched. "The Rainwings need me too. If I fought you, I'd be putting their tribe and throne at risk." "Maybe I could be king of both tribes," Darkstalker said. "Haha, just a joke. I have no interest in ruling a bunch of snoozy, colorful vegetarians." Turtle wasn't sure if he was imagining it, but he thought a few of the Nightwings actually looked a bit offended by that comment. "There's another alternative," Darkstalker went on. "You could just give me the Nightwing throne." He shot a glance at Moon as if to say, "Look, I'm making an effort. Now do you approve?" "That would not be fair to the dragons here who swore loyalty to me," said Glory. "Well," said Darkstalker, "let's all remember that they had a volcano pointed at their heads at the time. You're certainly more appealing than death by lava. But if there were a charming, handsome, super-powered Nightwing as an option instead..." Queen Glory looked out at the gathered Nightwings. What are they thinking? Turtle wondered. Would they rather be ruled by a Rainwing or by a legendary monster? He remembered the stories he'd read about Albatross, the sea-wing animus who massacred most of his family. If Albatross somehow came back to life, and he acted like a sane, friendly dragon, and Turtle had to choose between him or, say, Queen Glacier to rule the Kingdom of the Sea, who would he pick? "Oh," said Darkstalker, nodding at Glory. "Very interesting idea, Your Majesty." Glory looked at him sharply. "Let the Nightwings choose for themselves," he said. "Indeed, I could agree to that." "I haven't offered it to you yet," said Glory. "In this time period, it's considered bad manners to read another dragon's thoughts." "My apologies. But you had such a good idea. A peaceful transition of power. Maybe dragons have evolved in the last 2,000 years after all. What do you think?" Darkstalker said to the assembled Nightwings. "Shall we put it to a vote? Like some enormous, sprawling mess of a council? King Darkstalker or Queen Rainwing?" "No," Queen Glory said, stepping forward into a bar of sunlight that lit up every brilliant scale. "Not a vote. I don't want any Nightwing to be forced to live somewhere or under someone they are unhappy with." She studied the ebony dragons below her. "Those who wish to stay in the rainforest with me, in the village you've built with your own talons, are welcome here forever. Those who would rather follow Darkstalker to the Old Kingdom are free to go." Darkstalker looked down at the crowd, too, from a considerably greater distance, and he did not look pleased with what he saw, or what he was hearing in their minds, Turtle realized. "But you don't have to decide right now," Darkstalker said, quickly, slippery smooth. "You should get to know me first. I presume Queen Glory won't mind if I spend a day or two in the rainforest, reacquainting myself with my tribe." "Be our guest." Glory rested her quiet gaze on him for a moment, just a moment, while something puzzled flickered behind her eyes. Then she turned to Deathbringer, and the two of them hopped down from the stage to walk among the Nightwings. A hubbub of voices rose, hushed and panicked at the same time. Who would stay? Who would go? What would become of them? Darkstalker's eyes went to Moon. "See," he said softly. "I knew I wouldn't really have to kill Glory, but I had to present myself as a strong leader, Moon. That's what dragons understand." Moon gave him a wounded look and turned away, back toward her mother's wings. Turtle watched Darkstalker watching her go. "I think I've found one true thing about Darkstalker," he thought. "He actually cares about Moon. But how does she feel? She's the one who's been helping him so far. Will she follow him to the Night Kingdom? Or will she choose Queen Glory? And if she does, how is he going to react?" Queen Glory stayed in the Nightwing village until mid-afternoon, answering questions and talking with any dragon who approached her. Darkstalker installed himself on a flat boulder by the river and did the same, while Anemone splashed and swam in the fish-flickering water. It all seemed very peaceful, entirely open, nothing suspicious or underhanded. Turtle wrote a quick note on his slate to Kibbley. "Darkstalker wants to be Nightwing King. Nightwings deciding what they want." Then he wiped it clean and tried not to fall asleep while Darkstalker droned on about parliamentary procedures in the ancient Night Kingdom. But then Glory left, flying back to check on her Rainwings. Darkstalker saw her go. He waited a few minutes, swirling his tail in the river as he listened to a sly-looking dragon named Obsidian complain about rainforest insects. Finally, Darkstalker said, "That does sound dreadful. You know, the Night Kingdom doesn't have any mosquitoes." He sat up and called, "Mind Reader," touching his head as though summoning her by telepathy as well. A few moments later, the dragonette came scampering through the village, with an older, significantly more reluctant-looking Nightwing limping behind her. "Here," she said breathlessly, skidding to a stop below Darkstalker. "Come on, Father. You have to meet him. He's got amazing powers." "So I hear," Mind Reader's father said gruffly. But don't you understand he's sharing them?" she said. "If you could have any power in the world, what would you want, Father?" He snorted. "It'd be an animus, of course. Is there anything more powerful?" Mind turned to Darkstalker with shining eyes, but Darkstalker was shaking his head with a regretful expression. "I'm sorry," he said. "That is the one gift which beyond my abilities to grant. An animus dragon cannot make other animus dragons." Huh, thought Turtle. He knew that was a lie. Does Darkstalker know he's lying, or does he believe that? "That's not the only thing Father wants," Mind Reader said quickly. "I can hear it in his head. He wants the ability to heal instantly from any wound, Not just new wounds, but all the old aches and weak bones and crowded lungs he got from living on the volcano. Oh, Father, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were always in pain like that. She twined her tail around his, and Turtle found himself liking her for the first time.
You're not supposed to know these things,
her father said with a wince.
I'm not sure it's going to be good for you, little one, hearing everyone's thoughts this way. Dragons like to keep their secrets.
I know. It's incredible how many secrets there are, Mind Reader said, her eyes widening. If I were a blackmailing sort of dragon, I could get so much treasure. But I'm not, of course. Of course I'm not. And I wouldn't. She let out a laugh. Enough about me, Darkstalker.
I'm not sure about this,
said her father, edging away as Darkstalker reached toward him.
I don't trust anyone to put a spell on me. So we'll use something temporary,
Darkstalker said winningly. He sliced a vine off the tree branch overhead and wove it into a simple loop, which he dropped over the other dragon's neck.
I'll enchant this to heal you, and when it rots away, come back and let me know if you liked it and want something more permanent.
He hooked one claw in the vine necklace and muttered something under his breath. Mind Reader's father let out a startled gasp. He stretched his wings and tail. He turned his head from side to side. He looked 40 years younger just from the way he was suddenly standing and the way his eyes were shining.
Oh,
he said.
3 moons. I can't even remember what it was like to feel this way. I'm here to help,
said Darkstalker with his charming grin.
Now, go tell all your friends.
Uh-oh, thought Turtle. Uh-oh was right. The first trickle of curious nightwings became a waterfall once word spread that Darkstalker was handing out superpowers. The ability to catch any prey. Done. Flight speed faster than any skywing, or indeed any other dragon on Pyria. Done. Camouflage scales like the rainwings. Darkstalker chuckled and talked to that dragon out of his voice.
Why would you want to blur the lines of what you really are? Be a nightwing, and proud of it. If I give you advanced warrior skills, you'll never need to hide again anyway.
Advanced warrior skills. Done. The ability to go for days without sleep. Done. And then, Darkstalker announced that powering up 5 dragons per day was his limit.
But this way you can think about it overnight, he said. What do you each really want? What would be the best possible power for you? I promise you, I'll share my gift with 5 more dragons tomorrow, on the way to the old Night Kingdom.
Wow, Turtle thought. He's not messing around. Follow me, and I'll make you special. Or stay here, and remain your own ordinary self. What dragon could resist an offer like that? What chance does Glory have when that's the alternative? He pulled out his slate and thought for a moment, then wrote to Kibli, "The Nightwings are getting a king." Chapter 12. Turtle could feel the tide shifting in the village. Dragons whispering about another side to Darkstalker, about how the history scrolls could have been wrong, about how Nightwings should stick with their own and stop mingling with lazy vegetarians. I should tell Glory, shouldn't I? She has no idea who I am, but she'd want to know what Darkstalker is doing, wouldn't she? He worried for a while, watching Darkstalker tell stories of his old days to a rapt audience of dragons. Finally, he scooted back along his branch and set off in the direction Glory had gone. A short distance beyond the Nightwing village, all the trees may look the same. Not long after that, Turtle realized he didn't exactly know where he was going. He stopped, hovering in midair, and glanced around at the dense, never-ending greenery, lost in the rainforest. That sounded exactly like what would happen to the turtle character in a story. While the heroic heroes battled onward, wondering vaguely where he'd gone. Except in this case, there were no heroic heroes battling, because they were all too busy making friends with a potential supervillain. Turtle sighed. So, I can't be lost in the rainforest, he thought. I can't be the inept best friend right now. I have to be someone else. The messenger, perhaps, who warns the heroes of the danger and then fades back into the background. What would a successful, determined messenger do about being lost in the rainforest? He found a very fat tree with comfortable wide branches to sit on. All around him the bright red flowers danced, the leaves twitched, the shadows and sunlight darted and glimmered as wind pushed the treetops around. "Hello?" he said. "Any chance I'm being followed?" If he was, no one answered. He tried again. "I have an urgent message for Queen Glory. She'll want to hear it, I promise. But I don't know how to find her." More silence. More trees flapping their leaves at him dismissively. So, that didn't work. He wasn't quite lucky enough to have any camouflaged rain wings spying on him right now. His immediate instinct was to use his magic. That would be the easiest solution. That was always the easiest solution. Whenever he felt a little sick, or too tired for anatomy class, or needed help finding something, he'd reach for a magical solution, as long as it was small enough for no one to notice. But he couldn't do that now, because Darkstalker would notice any spell, no matter how small. His talons went to his pouch. Wait, maybe he already had what he needed. He slipped the pouch open with careful claws, tipping it so his animus-touched treasures clicked and tumbled together. Near the bottom, wrapped in leaves to protect it, was the piece of coral. It was shaped like a small, lacy red tree, with little bubbles all along its branches. Turtle remembered the night he'd enchanted it, the night he'd realized he was an animus. Queen Coral's sons were rarely invited to royal functions, as there were simply too many of them. But when Turtle, Octopus, and Cerulean were all 1 year old, their father managed to get them invited to their first Graham Ball. Turtle's brothers were excited. Turtle was mostly nervous. Would he say the right things? Would he remember all the rules about when to eat? And, more important, when not to eat? Gil had sent matching earrings for all the princes to wear, each one a heavy gold ring with a pearl hanging from it. Octopus and Cerulean clipped theirs on easily, but Turtle could not figure his out. He'd never worn an earring before. His claws felt too big and awkward to work the catch open far enough, and the earrings kept slipping out of his grasp and floating slowly down to the seaweed-carpeted floor of his room. Octopus and Cerulean laughed at him as he scrabbled in the seaweed, which had swallowed one of the earrings completely. "It's not that hard," Octopus teased, his phosphorescent scales flashing. "By all the whales, Turtle, do you have tentacles for talons?" They turned to swim out of the room. "See there," Cerulean called mockingly. "If you ever make it," Octopus agreed, and they cackled their way down the hall. Grimly, Turtle glared at the remaining earring, pinched between his claws. "Arrgh! Earring!" he snarled, shaking it. "Get on my ear right now and stay there!" The earring moved, shimmying in Turtle's grasp. Startled, he let go, and the earring confidently made a beeline straight for Turtle's ear. A moment later, he felt a nudging pinch, and when he looked in the mirror, there it was, hanging from his ear exactly where it was supposed to be. Did I do that? He felt terrified and elated at the same time. If he did that, there was only one explanation. He'd heard the stories about Albatross, the ancient animus sea-wing, although that particular story didn't end very well. There were fewer stories about other animus sea-wings, like Fathom, who were much more cautious with their powers. Despite the horror stories, a part of Turtle had always wondered what it would be like to be an animus, with all that power in his claws. He had to test it out, to find out if it was real. One of the walls of their room was made of coral, and he'd noticed a small piece that was nearly broken off. He swam over and carefully snapped it free, then clasped it between his talons. I enchant this piece of coral to help me find whatever I'm looking for. He peeked at the coral, but it looked exactly the same. My other earring. He flashed at it in Aquatic. He caught himself wondering whether coral could speak Aquatic, just as the little red tree twitched and twisted in his claws. It tugged him down to the seaweed carpet, where it poked through the flapping, overlapping strands until it bumped against his missing earring. That might have been the most glorious moment of Turtle's life. It was certainly all downhill from there, if you asked him. He was an animus. His brothers couldn't laugh at him now. His mother and father would have to pay attention to him. He'd be the star of the whole palace. That was kind of a frightening thought, actually. Everyone looking at him. Everyone wanting him to perform. Everyone waiting for him to mess up. But the truth was, only one thing stopped him from swimming straight into the ball and announcing his discovery to everyone. Stories. Turtle knew how stories worked. He knew that a dragon with strange powers could be a hero or a villain, and a lot depended on how everyone found out what he or she could do. The best heroes were the ones who took everyone by surprise in their hour of need. Just when all hope was lost, the unexpected hero would swoop in and save the day. And if Turtle revealed his power that way, when it was really needed, then no one would be scared of him. He'd clearly be a hero. Drama, excitement, and the chance to do something wonderful when no one saw it coming, that's what Turtle wanted in his story. So he hid his power, waiting for the perfect moment of revelation. The tribes were all at war. Surely it would come soon. But then it came, when his father needed him, and he didn't. Turtle sighed and turned the coral over in his claws. The last time he'd used it was the day Gil sent him searching for Snapper. Turtle had
and giggling over how incompetent he was. At first he thought he'd been very clever to think of using the coral, but it hadn't worked. Something was wrong with it. It kept trying to lead him out of the deep palace, which was why he was useless.
He was meant to do. He should have revealed his secret right then and saved the day. In fact, he should have used his magic to find the assassin who was killing off the princesses. It was embarrassing and awful that he'd never even thought of that until years later, when Tsunami showed up and figured out who it was. But after Turtle's failure, he didn't know how to tell anyone he was an animus. He'd lost the plot of his story. He kept imagining his father saying,
"But if you had magic the whole time, why didn't you find Snapper? Why didn't you save your sisters? What kind of dragon has this power and doesn't use it to help his family? I'm more disappointed in you than ever."
And the longer he hid it, the worse it got. Why didn't he use his magic to rescue his father from the Sky Wings? Why didn't he use his magic to stop the attack on the Summer Palace? Why was he such a useless, wretched excuse for a dragon? Turtle realized he was gripping the coral so tightly that it was leaving an imprint in his palm. He unclenched his fist and looked at it. He wasn't even sure why he'd kept the thing after it failed him. Maybe because it was the first real enchantment he'd ever cast. It reminded him of that brief moment when he'd been so happy and excited about his future. Most likely, it wouldn't work now either. But he couldn't enchant anything new. He didn't have many other options, and it was worth a try. "Queen Glory," he whispered. The coral twitched and hummed softly, then tugged him northward. He spread his wings and flew, paying attention to the signals it gave, turning him this way and that, and upward through the forest toward the canopy. I could have used this to help Peril find Scarlet, he realized, or to find my friends in Possibility. Instead, he had left it behind at school with his other animus-touched objects. It hadn't even occurred to him to try using it. He wouldn't have expected it to work, and he wouldn't have wanted Peril to notice it. But it certainly would have been useful, he thought ruefully. Add that to the list of ways I could have helpfully used my magic and didn't. Soon enough, there was Glory. There, in fact, was the entire Rainwing village, tucked into the treetops. As Turtle flew closer, he saw more and more shapes emerge from the leaves, hammocks and walkways, pavilions and dwellings, silver-furred sloths, and beautiful dragons of all colors everywhere. Queen Glory was on one of the highest pavilions, bathed in sunlight, with her wings spread wide. She was asleep, but Deathbringer sat watchfully beside her, scanning the undergrowth for any threats. Threats seemed hard to imagine here, in this peaceful place, but Turtle thought of Darkstalker and his 5 new super-powered Nightwings only a short flight away, and he shivered. The coral tugged him stubbornly toward the platform. Deathbringer saw him coming and sat up with a sharply curious but not unfriendly expression. "Halt!" he called, when Turtle was only a short distance away. "What business do you have with the Queen?" The animus-touched coral did not like it at all when Turtle stopped and hovered in midair. It jabbed painfully at his palm, trying to move him forward. A bit late, Turtle remembered the coral's weird habit. It would not stop searching for the thing he wanted to find until he actually touched the object with the coral. It wouldn't fly away on its own, but every time he picked it up, it would squirm and poke him until it reached its goal. This had been confirmed rather gruesomely when it dragged him through the palace the night after his failure, just so it could bump itself against the side of Snapper's corpse, in a way that Turtle thought was entirely too smug for a malfunctioning scrap of coral. Turtle said, clapping his other talon around the one that held the coral. "I've been watching Darkstalker since you left the Nightwing village, and I thought the Queen should know what he's been up to." "What's a Seawing doing in the rainforest in the first place?" Deathbringer asked doubtfully. "Are you here with Darkstalker, like the princess?" No, Turtle said. "I mean, I'm just watching him. Anemone is my sister," he fumbled, but apparently that was enough of an explanation for Deathbringer. "I see," he said. "Well, I'm reluctant to wake the Queen during her suntime. Is it urgent?" Said Turtle. Probably not. If Darkstalker wasn't going to enchant any more dragons today, did it make any difference? "Deathbringer," Queen Glory said with a sigh, opening her eyes. "I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of ears and how they work, but most normal dragons would find it very difficult to sleep through your loud interrogations." "I was giving you the opportunity to pretend to sleep through them," Deathbringer objected. "You're usually much better at it." "I nearly gave myself away by laughing when you said, 'Halt!' though," Glory said, stretching and sitting up. "I mean, who says, 'halt'? Seriously." "I thought it sounded dignified and commanding," said Deathbringer. "Indeed. Or like a pretentious Nightwing," Glory observed. "I am a pretentious Nightwing. It's part of my appeal." "All right, hush, you," said Glory, patting Deathbringer's talons with her tail. "Come here, Seawing. What's your name?" "Turtle, Your Majesty," he said. The coral was kind of going berserk as he landed beside her, and she shot a curious look at his squirming talons. "I'm Tsunami's brother. One of them. I'm nobody, really. The messenger, here to tell someone who can actually save the world. I just thought you should know that Darkstalker has given a few Nightwings special powers." "Special powers?" Deathbringer echoed. "Like what?" "Mind reading," Turtle listed off. "Super strength, fighting skills, the power to catch any prey, instant healing, that kind of thing." "Wow," said Glory. "It's going to be hard to compete with that." "I wouldn't leave you, even for a superpower," Deathbringer said loyally. "I think that is your superpower," Glory said to him. "Extreme heroic idiocy." She arranged her face to look serious again and turned to Turtle. "Well, if that means all the Nightwings decide to go with Darkstalker, I suppose my job around here will get a lot easier." She looked wistfully out at the rest of the village, where many of the rainwings were asleep in their leaf hammocks and sunlit nests.
"That's true," said Deathbringer. "Much less grumbling and complaining to deal with."
"They were kind of growing on me, though," Glory admitted. "They're impressively resilient."
"Not to mention, obsessed with scrolls and learning and stuff," said Deathbringer. "All your favorite things."
I did think the Nightwings and the Rainwings could be good for each other, once they had some mutual respect and trust in place. Glory lifted her wings up and down in a soft sigh. "Oh, well." "Wait," said Turtle. "You're not going to do anything? To stop him?" "We have an agreement," Glory said, surprised. "Why would I stop him?" Maybe because he's turning his tribe into kind of a super army? Doesn't that worry either of you?"
"Huh," said Deathbringer. "I guess you could look at it that way."
"Isn't it your job to look at it that way?" Turtle thought, frustrated. "Maybe, if it was anyone else," Queen Glory agreed. "But I mean, Darkstalker's such a great dragon. I just trust him. Don't you?"
"I do," Deathbringer said, nodding. "I like him."
Turtle couldn't speak. His head felt as if it was full of squirming, flashing electric eels. All his suspicions coalesced into one diamond-bright conviction. This was not a normal reaction. Not to Darkstalker, nor any dragon who came in to steal the tribe you were ruling. None of the dragons who'd spoken to Darkstalker were reacting to him in a normal way. Kibli was right after all. He had been under a spell. That calm, trusting feeling he'd had about Darkstalker, that was the work of magic. This was why everyone was behaving so weird and unworried. Darkstalker had crafted some kind of spell, something that affected every dragon who met him. It made dragons like him and trust him, and perhaps worse, what if it made everyone obey him, or willing to sacrifice their lives for him? If Darkstalker wanted to, he could turn all the dragons of Pyria, one by one, into his own personal puppets, and nobody would be able to stop him, because nobody would even know anything was wrong. Chapter 13. So, maybe now it's time to run and hide, Turtle thought. Back to the kingdom of the sea, back to the anonymity of his pack of brothers, back to a world so distant that Darkstalker might never come there, back to the only place that might be safe, at least for a little while. This was too big for him to handle. He sort of had Kibli, but what if something happened to Kibli, or Darkstalker figured out how to ensnare him again? Turtle had ended up the only dragon Pyria who saw Darkstalker the way he really was. And then what? Spend the rest of his life as the unbalanced, invisible dragon, trying to convince his friends they were bewitched by a super magician? The Mad Prophet of Doom. Not exactly the role I ever saw myself in. But the alternative was coward who sits and waits for the inevitable apocalypse. If he scurried off back to the ocean, would anyone ever notice what Darkstalker was doing? Would anyone ever be able to stop him? So if he couldn't run away, and he couldn't change anyone's mind, and he couldn't fight Darkstalker himself, what could he do? I need help. He touched the cord of his pouch, tied around his neck. Should he write to Kibli, ask him to come here? He could feel his worrying reflex kicking into action. His scales felt hot and clammy at the same time. Was he sure that Kibli was free of any Darkstalker spells? What if Darkstalker had enchanted his spell to be irreversible, even by other magic? Or what if he'd enchanted Kibli to stay at Jade Mountain, so seeing him in the rainforest would make him suspicious? Everything Kibli did might give Darkstalker a clue that his spell wasn't working on him anymore. Turtle's safety would be in danger if Kibli and Darkstalker spent too much time near each other. I wish I could get his advice, though. Turtle dropped his talons, frustrated. Too bad the slates don't work both ways. Thanks to me being a short-sighted idiot again. Who else could help him? I need someone who hasn't met Darkstalker yet. Someone who will believe me. Someone who can actually be the hero. His mother? Would Queen Coral believe him if he went to her with this story? Would she be able or willing to fight Darkstalker? He couldn't really imagine her trusting him that much. And if she did, and brought the Sea Wings out to fight Darkstalker, wouldn't that put Turtle's entire tribe in danger? So perhaps one of the other queens, Glacier, Ruby, Moorhen, or Thorn, would any of them listen to a Sea Wing? And wouldn't they fall under Darkstalker's spell when they met him? Not to mention, in order to convince them his story was true, he'd have to tell them everything. As in, oh, yes, and I'm an animus. Everything. He shuddered, and his hold on the coral loosened, and it darted forward in a flash and bopped Queen Glory on the side of her tail. She turned to stare at him. What was that? Nothing, he said. My talon slipped, sorry. She raised one eyebrow. You're an odd dragon, Turtle. That's what my friends tell me, he said, and his friends rose up in his mind, and a possibility shot through him, shining with hope. Your Majesty, he said, may I ask, how could you? I don't know, Glory said, her wings drooping. The healers can't understand why she hasn't woken up yet. They don't know what to do for her. They all thought that once she was back in the rainforest, around the smells and sounds and sun that she grew up with, she'd... Back in the rainforest? Turtle interrupted. She's here? Of course. Queen Glory flicked her tail, knocking loose a shower of yellow blossoms. I wasn't going to leave her alone on the other side of the continent. The healers got back with her yesterday. Can I see her? Turtle asked. His claws were tingling. Kinkajou hadn't met Darkstalker. Kinkajou would believe him. He could trust her with his secret. And Kinkajou was much more cut out for heroism than he was. Glory gave him directions to the healer's pavilion, not far away, tucked into a little alcove of the rainforest that seemed even more peaceful than the rest of the village. Turtle could smell healing herbs and oranges as he flew to the opening. Inside, sunlight poured through the rooms from skylights that had been opened in the roofs. A pair of pale blue healers were asleep in one corner. Another was neatly folding cobwebs and moss into bundles on one of the shelves. She looked up as Turtle came in, but seemed only mildly surprised to see a Sea Wing in the pavilion. She swept one wing toward the bed where Kinkajou slept, and Turtle nodded, unconsciously flashing his scales in aquatic. Yes, that's who I'm looking for. Kinkajou lay in a sunbeam that outlined every scale with gold. She was still as white as an ice wing, white being the color of pain or shock to the rain wings. But in this sun, it was the white of opals, jeweled and glinting with hints of hidden colors, pearl pinks and sparks of green. It wasn't the color of her scales that made her look so unlike Kinkajou. It was her complete stillness. Turtle had never seen Kinkajou sit still for a moment. Even in class, her wings always twitched, or her claws fidgeted, or her face would make sideways expressions at him or Moon. What did he say? I knew that answer. Is it time to eat yet? Are you starving? I'm starving. Isn't school amazing? Turtle sat down beside her bed and curled his tail in, missing her in a way that filled him with heavy seaweed from nose to tail. He knew this was ridiculous. He didn't even know her that well. They'd had nearly 4 days at Jade Mountain before everything went wrong. Before Kinkajou left to find Winter's brother, defeat Scarlet, and save the world from Moon's prophecy. While Turtle chose to slink back to the safety of the school instead. That was exactly why he needed her. Kinkajou, he whispered, can you hear me? I need you to wake up. Knowing Kinkajou, he half expected her to open her eyes and joke, Oh, well, if you need me to, then sure. I was just taking a really nap, but let's go fight some bad guys. She didn't know. He'd already tried this, back in Possibility, but now he fumbled his healing river stone out of his pouch again. His stupid, short-sighted enchantment had only healed the surface wounds. Still, he brushed it lightly along Kinkajou's bruised spine, over the bandages on her broken ribs, and gently around her fractured skull. Impossibility. They'd watched the bruises fade, and all the scrapes and cuts disappear. But it didn't work any deeper, and Kinkajou did not wake up. This time wasn't any different. Kinkajou still lay quietly breathing, eyes closed. Turtle had wanted to enchant something right then that could wake her, but he was afraid that one of the possibility doctors would notice, and Moon had been worried for his soul. She suggested waiting 2 more days, at least, to see if Kinkajou woke up on her own. But then they'd flown off to find Peril, which had led them to the scroll, and then the release of Darkstalker, and now here they were, and now he couldn't use magic to help her. He crushed a bright orange flower between his claws, frustrated. If only he'd been brave and stubborn enough to heal her earlier. But then she would have met Darkstalker, along with everyone else. She'd be under his spell too. "Kinkajou," he said sternly, "enough sleeping. Time to get up and save the world." No reaction. "You know you've always wanted to," he wheedled. "Think how impressed Queen Glory will be. All you have to do is wake up and figure out how to stop the most powerful dragon in the history of Pyria. No problem, right?" No reaction from Kinkajou, but he got a very odd look from the healer at the upper end of the pavilion.